Wesley Kimball Walton, son of Charles Wesley Walton and Hannah Wheeler Kimball, born the 21st of February 1850 in Mexico, Maine, and died the 9th of April 1917 in Salt Lake City. He married Frances Matilda Huffaker the 21st of July 1876 in the Salt Lake Endowment House. Frances was born the 5th of June 1857 in South Cottonwood, Utah, and died the 3rd of December 1942 in Salt Lake City. Both were buried at Wasatch Lawn Cemetery in Salt Lake City. After the usual childhood days, Wesley became a student at Norridge Military Academy, Vermont. During the Civil War, the President of the United States called for volunteers, and Wesley was among those who enlisted. When it was learned that he was underage, he was discharged. This was a bitter disappointment to him, but it proved to be the spur to his desire for higher education, and he returned to Norridge and graduated. He was also a graduate of the New England School of Music in Boston, where he studied violin, but did not follow music as a profession. Following his graduation, he spent a few years in his father's law office in Portland. When he came west in 1872, an illness caused him to remain in Salt Lake City for a time, and he decided to take a job teaching school. This chance incident proved to be a determining factor in shaping Wesley's life. His first school was in South Cottonwood, where he boarded in the home of Simpson David Huffaker, who was a trustee and member of the school board. His daughter, Frances, attended the school. This gave them a splendid opportunity to become acquainted. About 1873, Wesley and Savannah Putnam, son of Artemas Walton Putnam, went to Woodruff, Rich County, Utah, where they spent the winter living in a dugout in the creek bank. They traveled 22 miles to Evanston, Wyoming, their nearest town, for supplies, and among other things one day brought back an orange crate. From it, Wesley fashioned a guitar, and he and Van, who also had a flair for music, whiled away many an hour trying out the new instrument. After Wesley and Frances were married, they moved to Woodruff, where they pioneered in the settlement of that valley. Success came gradually in their sheep business, and later in the breeding of purebred registered shorthorn cattle. Grandfather and grandmother both had a talent for music, and as the family grew, the children were given an opportunity to play with them and were educated in this art. Each child was instructed in playing an instrument that, in combination with the others, would eventually develop into a well-balanced orchestra and band. We enjoyed an impromptu concert in our home almost every evening. With his 10 sons and 3 daughters, he gained some prominence by making concert tours throughout Utah and Wyoming. Musicians of note were frequent guests in their home. Grandfather kept up his interest in athletics and entertainment throughout his busy life. He was a hunting and fishing enthusiast and enjoyed all kinds of athletic games. In the early days, he was very active in organizing ball games and encouraged all to take part. With the 10 boys, we had a basketball team and a baseball team. He had a passion for theatricals and freely contributed his talent and energies to the production of many celebrated plays. He loved to act and encouraged his family to participate. He made and painted much of the scenery, and grandmother made exciting and lovely costumes for the actors. In the year 1902 or thereabouts, he was instrumental in producing Corianton in the old Salt Lake Theater, in which some of the boys took part. Grandfather passed the bar examinations for the state of Utah, but never followed law as a profession. He served as Justice of the Peace and as Chairman of the State Republican Committee, a position he held for many years without compensation other than a personal satisfaction. Over a period of years, he used his knowledge of law to help the settlers of Rich County to prove their government claims and to assist with the solution of other legal problems that arose, without thought of remuneration. In 1905, he organized the Bank of Randolph and served as its first president. A few years later, he organized the Utah and Wyoming Independent Telephone Company and became its first president. The following year, he was elected state senator from Rich County, and a few years later was elected state senator from Salt Lake County, which office he held until his death in 1917. His knowledge of law was an advantage to him during his career in the state Senate, where he was known for his honesty, fairness, and determination that justice be rendered. The Senate journals show that he was a member of standing committees on agriculture, irrigation, banks and banking, education, judiciary, livestock, public printing, and others. It was he who sponsored Senate Bill No. 116, making unlawful the sale of medicine containing opium without labeling it and providing penalty for violation of the act. Grandmother was a wonderful helpmate and inspiration to grandfather. During their early life in Woodruff, they lived many miles from their nearest neighbor. One day, while grandmother was alone with her first two babies, a band of roving Indians surrounded their two-room cabin. While they were pounding on the door, she frantically squeezed herself and little ones through the small back window and, with wildly beating heart, found refuge in a clump of willows behind the cabin. When the last of the intruders left, she found, to her dismay, that they had taken every bit of her food. Such harrowing experiences were not uncommon in the early settlements of northern Utah at that time. The following item is an excerpt from the life of John M. Baxter, president of the Woodruff Stake. A conference was held at Lyman, Wyoming, to which 70 people from Woodruff Ward came traveling 65 miles in covered wagons, carrying enough food for a week. Wesley K. Walton was stake chorister, and he brought with him his orchestra consisting of himself and his sons. This was a remarkable group, writes President Baxter. The Waltons were a talented family, and many of the children could play an instrument before they could read or write. The following children were born to Wesley K. Walton and Frances M. Huffaker. 1. Charles Wesley, born April 22, 1877, in Woodruff, Utah. 2. Lester Huffaker, born December 6, 1878, in Woodruff, Utah. 3. Rule, born November 17, 1880, in Woodruff, Utah. 4. Reuben Dyke, born September 26, 1882, in Garden City, Utah. 5. Gaon, born October 21, 1884, in Woodruff, Utah. 6. Thaddeus, Thad, born October 17, 1886, in Woodruff, Utah. 7. Paul, born January 13, 1889, in Woodruff, Utah. 8. Simpson, Sim, born December 10, 1890, in Woodruff, Utah. 9. Hannah, Nan, born October 25, 1892, in Woodruff, Utah. 10. Mark, born April 3, 1895, in South Cottonwood, Utah. 11. Arthur, born June 28, 1897, in South Cottonwood, Utah. 12. Evelyn, Evie, born December 25, 1899, in Woodruff, Utah. 13. Blanche, born March 23, 1902, in Woodruff, Utah. The following stories were written by Uncle Dyke.
Father and Mother decided to go to Woodruff, Utah to make their future home. Father had spent one winter living there in a dugout. Father filed on a 320-acre desert entry and proceeded to build a house, a 2-room log with dirt roof and floors. Lumber and logs were hauled from the West Mountains, about 20 miles distance. They made all their furniture from rough lumber. Mother did all her cooking on a fireplace. I well remember watching her cook and sweep the dirt floors. Charles, Lester, and Ruel were born here. About this time they bought a 10-acre farm at Garden City, where I was born. They then moved back to Woodruff, where Donnell and Thad were born. They had in the meantime added a fine bedroom and living room. The bedroom had plastered walls and the living room was lined with lumber, papered with newspaper. It had a shingled roof. Father made the shingles by hand with a drawing knife. There was also a front porch. They dug a well and used a rope and bucket to draw the water. The closest neighbor was the Anson Call Ranch, which was about 3/4 mile away, and the very small settlement, which was about 1.5 miles away. The Indians were frequent visitors. They were roving bands. I remember watching the hideous roasting of a squirrel on a stick. After a short time they ate it completely. It was only partially cooked. About the time Dunn was the baby and Thad was coming, plans were completed to build a big new home. It was to have a full basement. The first floor was to have 4 large rooms, with an entrance hall leading to a large front porch, also a pantry and an east and west porch. The second floor would have 4 bedrooms and closets, with a stairway down into the front hall. It had a beautiful polished handrail which we all used to slide down. The house was built by a contractor from Bountiful. Inside it was lath and plaster, finished with beautiful wallpaper. The outside was channel siding, painted light gray. It was indeed a palace compared with the other houses in Rich County. I remember we all loved the old home after the new one was built. We used it to play in. The big room was equipped as a shop. The first log room was a blacksmith's shop with horseshoeing equipment. The other room was used for ice storage. The ice was buried in sawdust. Part of it was also used for a chicken coop. During this time, much of the heavy work was done by oxen. They worked in pairs, connected with a yoke and chain back to the plow, etc. Both father and mother seemed to realize from the very beginning that they would be blessed with a big family, so they planned which instrument each of us should learn so as to have an orchestra and band. As each child became old enough, they worked into the group. Charles took up cornet and was soon part of the orchestra. Lester played an alto trombone. Rue liked violin. I preferred cornet. So Charles got busy on the organ. And Mother played E-flat tuba. Dunn started on the clarinet. Father played baritone. Thad started on trombone, then baritone and cello, and became a professional trap drummer. Paul took piccolo, flute, and became a very fine piano player. Sim played alto or mellophone. Nan was a fine piano player. Mark seemed to be a natural-born musician. He first played trombone, then drums, cornet, and piano. Art played an alto horn. He became the youngest member of the band. Evie played piano, and both she and Blanche loved to sing. Father graduated from Norwich Military University of Vermont in law at the age of 17 in 1867. He then decided to join the gold rush to California. He stopped off in Salt Lake on the way and stayed. He met Brigham H. Roberts, who was about the same age as Father. They became close friends. They spent quite some time prospecting over the west of Salt Lake in the Ochre Mountains, where Bingham Copper Mine is now.
The following story was written by Uncle Dyke Walton about his mother, Frances Huffaker Walton, and my grandmother.
Mother's sphere of action was home. She was the oldest of a family of 13 children. Her father, Simpson David Huffaker, and mother, Elizabeth and Brady, both crossed the plains with the Mormon Exodus. Mother also had 13 children, 10 boys and 3 girls. The rearing of 13 children was in itself a large, wonderful, and difficult job. She was the hub around which the whole family revolved, worked, played, and lived. Along with her everyday activities, cooking and preparing meals, using a wood and coal stove, carrying water from the outdoor well, filling and cleaning lamps, she made quilts, most of our clothes, knit our knee-length stockings, and we were hard on our clothes, patched, mended, washed, and ironed. She made band uniforms, costumes for the plays Father produced. This was how she spent her evenings. She always had clean, ironed clothes ready for Sunday school. She was organist at church and played for the dances. She played brass tuba in the band. She helped with the milking, strained the milk and churned the cream into butter, which she washed, salted and molded for use in 2-pound rolls. She scrubbed floors and cut rags for rugs. She swept the porches, dust in the summer and snow in the winter. She would hitch a horse and buggy, clean up some of us little kids, drive 2 miles to the store for groceries, shoes, cloth to make shirts, dresses, apron and bonnets. She would get oilcloth for the table, mosquito netting to keep out the flies. She helped choose wallpaper, made the flour and alum paste, trimmed the paper and helped hang it. She could paint woodwork and furniture. After getting the kids off to bed, she and Father would sit up late. They loved to be alone together and plan for things to be done in the future. Father told her of all his political plans. He always enjoyed her advice and usually took, to his adventures, her practical opinions of justice. He talked over with her everything he ever did, in his public life and plans for the children and home. She had no malice toward any person or creature. She loved domestic animals, horses, cows, sheep and pigs. She loved to gather the eggs and watch the setting hens and the little chicks as they emerged. She carefully did what was necessary for the care and comfort of these little hunks of life. She helped bottle feed little calves and lambs. As her perfect sons, this was the nickname our dear sisters gave us, were busy playing ball, tennis, horseshoes, music, hunting, or fishing, she would chop the wood, gather aprons full of cedar chips, carry water, help with the chores, etc. She saved fat and grease and made it into laundry soap. She had 2 married sisters whose husbands didn't do so well. She helped them by giving them food, cloth to make clothes for their children. Their husbands worked for us much of the time, especially during haying, so Mother had extra men for many meals. She was happy to have a family which loved to stay home. We had everything to make a home attractive: our music, horseback riding, tennis, horseshoes, nice-looking boys and beautiful girls. We were all healthy, wholesome, happy, and loved our work and play. We took lots of pictures. had plenty of milk, eggs, and ice to make treats. Dozens of young people came for fun. In the winter, we went on sleigh rides. When we arrived back home, Mother would always have oyster stew and crackers. Sometimes we had a candy pull. But always plenty of music, a large group of church people to sing with our orchestra. Our home was a place to which everyone loved to come. Mother was a graceful, cheerful, and generous hostess. She was always dressed so neat and clean. She wore nice aprons when she was doing her work, which was most of her waking hours. She had snappy hazel blue eyes, long jet black hair, parted in the middle, and combed straight back. 2 braids were usually twisted in a bob at the back of her head. She always wore earrings and a plain band wedding ring, which she had never taken off until she got a felon inflammation of the cellular tissue and periosteum on that finger. My, how she suffered! The end of the finger had to be lanced. It was so swollen that it was a slow, painful deal, cutting off her wedding band. Dr. Harrison, our family doctor, lived in Evanston. Charles and Lester would go to Evanston one day and come back the next. Whenever Father had the doctor come to Woodruff, he took him to every home that needed a doctor. Father always paid the bill with willingness. He was thankful for the blessings we enjoyed. He or Mother never neglected the opportunity to do a favor for the fine people of our town. About 1912, the town folk arranged a surprise party for our family. It was held in the old schoolhouse in Woodruff. We were all able to attend. There was so much good food and good cheer. Everyone was so glad to do this testimonial for us. It was one of the most thoughtful expressions of loyalty and love ever extended to our family. Along with the full and useful life she made for herself, for Father, and her family, she gave birth to a fine, healthy, strong baby every 2 years for the first 28 years of their lives, beginning with 8 boys, then 1 girl, then 2 boys, and last 2 girls. The days and years we spent with our father and mother have always been cherished with remembrance of love and affection. No greater heritage was ever left a family than they left for us. They were 2 of the best of God's chosen servants. As time passes on, one of my greatest joys is looking at a family picture and living again the moments of choice associations of my parents and my wonderful brothers and sisters.